amazing. But those negotiations have been happening largely between these two men. Vice President Joe Biden, who as a senator drafted and led the passage of the first Violence Against Women Act back in 1994, and House Majority Leader Eric Cantor of Virginia. In their talks, there has been one principal issue for Cantor and his fellow Republicans. Reports indicate that Cantor and his fellow Republicans are willing to talk about including LGBT women and undocumented immigrants in their revised House bill, but the House approach would effectively deny American Indian women equal access to justice because it prevents tribal authorities from having jurisdiction over crimes committed on their territory by male abusers who aren't American Indians. According to the Huffington Post report, Cantor is refusing to accept any added protections for American Indian women that would give expanded jurisdiction to tribes, and is pressuring Democrats to concede on that front. Meanwhile, the bill meant to protect all women remains in limbo. Along with Jonathan Capehart and Victoria DeFrancesco Soto, we are now joined by Chloe Angel, editor of Feministing.com, and also Deborah Parker, vice chairwoman of the Tulalip Tribes of Washington State. Very nice to see you, Deborah.
Thank you for having me here.
So you just met with Eric Cantor's staff. What do you think is motivating the congressman at this point?
Well, he's listening to some of the discussions from other House members and really taking notice of the ISA coal bill that includes tribal jurisdictions. So we're really hoping that that he's listening and that he's understanding the issue better. So that's where we're at right now.
So break this down for me a little bit. I mean, I think there are folks who live in some parts of the country out west and in other places who really understand sort of what goes on vis-a-vis tribal lands and U.S. lands and that sort of thing. But if you live in, the Northeast and you sort of don't quite get it, explain why this VAWA reauthorization is so important to address this issue for American Indian women.
Well, it's very critical because this time it includes key provisions that help Native Americans to prosecute non-Indians who come onto the reservation lands and commit crimes against Native Americans, whether it's domestic violence, sexual assault. So this allows us protection over our Native Americans on reservation. And it's a narrow set of laws that would protect our women and our children and our community. And it deals with those who come onto the reservation and not only that are visitors, but who are connected to our community.
Right. So this, to me, Chloe, feels like someone missed the memo that the war on women is part of why the Republican Party lost in 2012. And even to the extent that they maintained House control, they actually lost a popular vote of about 500,000 Americans who preferred Democrats over Republicans. They just had already gerrymandered. Under what circumstances are they now willing to go without a reauthorization of VAWA?
Look, I have yet to hear a compelling argument from those who oppose these provisions about why Native American women should not be extended the same rights and protections that women in the rest of the country, until now at least, have enjoyed. When they talk about it, I feel like I'm Charlie Brown and they're the teacher, and instead of wah, 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 all I hear is, we don't give a damn about Native American women and their health and safety. I think we like to talk about America's mistreatment of American Indians as though it's done, as though it's a regrettable part of our past, and it's not. It's a reprehensible part of our future. 1 in 3 Native American women will be raped in her lifetime, and over 80% of those rapes are committed by non-Indian men. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, right. And this is the one space actually where, so in almost every other community, rape and domestic violence is intra-ethnic or intra-racial. So African American women most likely to be victimized by African American men, white women by white men, Latinas by Latinos. But in this one case, actually, indigenous women are most likely to be victimized by men who are not, in fact, Indian men.
Well, perpetrators know that there is a jurisdictional gap, that they can come on a reservation and that there'll be limited resources to prosecute, and they know they'll get away with it. And that's the issue here.
In my disbelief at how could you not reauthorize VAWA, I went on and I read Phyllis Schlafly's column And in her column, what she does, interestingly enough, is she dehumanizes women and she makes it more of a fiscal matter. So she calls it feminist pork, and that this is a drain on the budget. And it was very interesting to see that those are the tropes that are being used. But shifting gears in talking also about Native American women, another big hole that would be left in the Republican version of this legislation is with undocumented women.
Yeah.
Because what tends to happen is if you have a woman who is undocumented, who is married to or is the partner of somebody who's a legal permanent resident or a citizen, they can dangle that citizenship in front of them in order to keep them from reporting them. And they would roll back the self-petitioning process, which allows them to circumvent their abuser and petition for citizenship without their knowledge and without the risk of being abused.
Yeah, and so this is
about,
critical.
Sorry, this is about already vulnerable populations, right? This is about kicking already vulnerable populations when they're down. And I think to answer your earlier question, what we saw this year in the election outcome is an outpouring of outrage and anger at for attacks on mostly white privileged women, right? And an uprising of those women for the most part. And what gets left out so often is women in already vulnerable populations.
I'm sorry, I'm mystified from the very beginning of this conversation about Eric Cantor and what started this conversation, which is they want to make it possible for non-Indian men to basically get away with prosecution for crimes against Native American women. Why is that?
Why?
How is that?
Well, because the issue is they don't want the authority to arrest, right? It feels like the Americans with the Disabilities International Extension, right? We just don't want the UN in here in our business, right?
But that's what I find so repugnant about this. It's as if they are... It's as if they're protecting white men from prosecution.
Oh, no, it's not as if. That is what...
So that's why I want to know when you...
They're protecting perpetrators.
Right.
So more than Native American women. And it's not only Native American women, but last night I received a call from a non-Native woman who had the perpetrator drag her to what he thought was a reservation land. And you know what? He missed the mark. It wasn't reservation land. He raped her. He abused her. He left her there for dead. And guess what? She survived.
But
he got a long sentence. But she had told me last night that had that been reservation land,
he would have gotten away with it.
He would have gotten away with it.
So what does Eric Cantor say when you met with his staff and you laid this all out? What does his staff say about why they're allowing
it easier for white men to rape women of color?
They states' rights. That's the shield they use.
Clearly, that's outrageous. That is outrageous.
It is. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come right back on exactly this topic because it's outrageous and we're outraged.